Willow Creek was the kind of town where neighbors still borrowed sugar, and the biggest scandal in recent memory had been a high school football coach caught sneaking beers in the locker room. Tucked away in the hills of North Carolina, it was a quiet place, steeped in church traditions and Sunday morning rituals. The heart of the town was Grace Fellowship Chapel, and at the center of that chapel was Pastor Jonathan Miles. Pastor Jonathan, as the congregation lovingly called him, was 38, tall and magnetic, with a voice that could calm storms or ignite revival. His sermons were poetic, tinged with just enough fire and brimstone to stir guilt, then swiftly smoothed over with hope. Women adored him, men respected him, and children followed him like ducklings. So when he married Rebecca Langston, a local school teacher known for her gentle heart and sharp intellect, the town saw it as a match made in heaven. Before we begin, like this video and comment where you are watching from. Your support helps us bring more intriguing stories. Now let's begin. The wedding was grand but tasteful. Rebecca wore an ivory lace dress passed down from her grandmother, and Jonathan stood at the altar in a slate gray suit that made him look more like a movie star than a man of God. People cried. They said it was beautiful, holy, destined. But Rebecca had doubts. The first red flag had come just weeks before the wedding. They were sitting at her apartment, sharing tea and talking about children when she casually mentioned a prenatal genetic test she'd read about. Jonathan's mood shifted instantly. His smile faded. "Why would you even bring something like that up?" he asked. Rebecca blinked. "I just thought it was interesting. To plan." He set his cup down with too much force. "God doesn't make mistakes, Rebecca. Testing our babies before they're born? That's not faith. That's fear." She had let it go, but a seed of unease had been planted. Still, they married, and Rebecca moved into the parsonage, a charming two-story house with white shutters and a blooming dogwood in the front yard. Church members dropped off casseroles, welcomed her with warmth and sincerity. It should have felt like home, but something was off. Jonathan's moods were unpredictable. Some days he was affectionate, bringing her flowers or surprising her with breakfast in bed. Other days he retreated into his study for hours, locking the door and emerging only when it was time for evening service. When she asked what he was working on, he'd murmur something about spiritual warfare or counseling needs, but he never let her in. One Sunday afternoon, while Jonathan was at a leadership meeting, Rebecca entered the study to drop off freshly laundered linens. She wasn't snooping. Not at first, but then she noticed a locked drawer in the desk, something she had never seen before. Curious, she tried the small key that opened his filing cabinet. It fit. Inside was a bottle of pills, temazepam, a sedative. Rebecca frowned. She was familiar with the drug. Her sister Emily had been prescribed it after their father's death to help her sleep. Why would Jonathan need sleeping pills? He had always preached about trusting God to carry burdens. Medication, especially mind-altering ones, was something he warned others about from the pulpit. Later that evening, she confronted him. "Jonathan, I found something in your desk. Temazepam. Are you all right?" His eyes darkened. "You went through my things?" "I wasn't trying to snoop. I was cleaning. I got worried. You said you didn't believe in this sort of thing." He crossed the room in 2 long strides, his expression unreadable. "There are things I battle with, Rebecca. You don't understand the kind of spiritual pressure I deal with every day. You think standing on that pulpit is easy? People's lives, their faith, their marriages, rest on my shoulders." She stepped back. "Then let me help you. Let me in." He softened just slightly. "You're my wife. Of course I will. But trust me, not everything needs to be dissected. Some things are between a man and God." Rebecca nodded, but that night, she couldn't sleep. 2 weeks later, while volunteering at the church office, Rebecca received an email that made her stomach drop. It was an anonymous message sent to the chapel's shared inbox. "Does your husband preach honesty while hiding secrets from his past? Look into St. Luke's Community Church, Dallas, Texas, 2009. He wasn't always so blessed." She read it 3 times, hands trembling. Jonathan had told her he moved from Texas because he felt called to serve in smaller communities. but he had never mentioned a prior church by name nor any controversy. That night, she waited until Jonathan was asleep and quietly searched the church laptop for any record of St. Luke's. It took only a few clicks. In 2009, a woman named Vanessa McAllister had accused Pastor Jonathan Miles of inappropriate behavior during private counseling sessions. The case had been dropped due to lack of evidence, but the scandal had cost him his position. Rebecca stared at the screen. Her husband had lied. The following morning, she decided to visit her sister Emily. They met at a quiet coffee shop on the edge of town. Emily, always the skeptic, listened in the stunned silence as Rebecca recounted everything. The pills, the locked drawer, the email. Emily sipped her coffee slowly. "You need to be careful. This isn't just about a secret. He's hiding who he really is." Rebecca bit her lip. "I want to believe there's an explanation. That he was falsely accused. People change, right?" Emily shook her head. "Or they get better at hiding." Rebecca returned home that evening, resolved to talk to Jonathan again, to demand the truth. But he wasn't in the study, or in the kitchen, or upstairs. She found him in the garage, leaning over his workbench, breathing heavily. He jumped when she entered. "Rebecca, you scared me. We need to talk, now." He stood straight. "What is it this time? St. Luke's? Dallas? Vanessa McAllister?" His face turned to stone. For a moment, silence hung in the air like fog. "I knew that email would find you eventually," he muttered. "So it's true? You were accused." "She was unstable," he snapped. "She came to me for help, and when I refused her advances, she retaliated. People believed her because that's what they do." Rebecca's voice wavered. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to drag old ghosts into our new life. And honestly, I thought you were stronger than this." She turned and walked out. That night, neighbors would later say they heard loud voices, a crash, then silence. When morning came, the sun rose gently over Willow Creek. A jogger passing by the parsonage noticed the front door ajar. When he approached, he saw Jonathan sitting on the steps, barefoot, staring at nothing. Inside, Rebecca's body lay at the bottom of the staircase, her neck twisted unnaturally, eyes wide open. Jonathan told the police she had fallen. The town mourned. The funeral was packed. Jonathan cried through the eulogy, quoting scripture about mysterious ways and divine plans. Most believed him. Most, but Emily didn't. She saw the bruises on her sister's wrist in the casket, and she remembered her final words. "I want to believe there's an explanation." Willow Creek had never known scandal, not like this. When news of Rebecca Miles's sudden death spread through the town, the initial wave of grief was accompanied by disbelief. A tragic fall, the sheriff's report said. No signs of forced entry, no obvious motive. A domestic accident, and nothing more. But Emily Langston wasn't buying it. She sat at her kitchen table the morning after the funeral, clutching a cold cup of coffee and staring at the bruises on her sister's wrist in the photo she discreetly snapped at the viewing. A faint purple mark, easily dismissed by others, screamed something different to her. That wasn't from a fall. It looked like a hand, a grip. Her friend, Mia, walked in and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" "Would you?" Mia sighed. "Number. But if you're going after a pastor in a town like this, you'd better have proof, not just suspicions." Emily nodded. She didn't need vengeance. She needed the truth. Back at Grace Fellowship Chapel, the mood was oddly conflicted. The loss of the pastor's wife had cast a shadow, but so had the hush surrounding it. Jonathan Miles had returned to the pulpit a week later, his voice hoarser than usual, sermons tinged with sorrow. But those closest to him noticed something strange. He didn't mention Rebecca much. He thanked the congregation for their support. He spoke of grief and God's mysterious plans. But he never wept at the pulpit again. Never mentioned her name in prayer. No framed photo in the foyer. No memorial service organized in her honor by the church. And then there was the matter of Sister Lorraine. Lorraine Evans, the church secretary and longtime choir director, had worked closely with Rebecca organizing youth programs. A soft-spoken woman in her 60s, Lorraine had always seemed unshakably loyal to the pastor, until she wasn't. 3 Sundays after Rebecca's funeral, Lorraine didn't show up to church. The next day, Emily knocked on her door. "Lorraine, it's Rebecca's sister. I need to ask you something." The door opened slowly. Lorraine looked thinner. Her eyes, usually clear and sharp, were rimmed with red. "Come in, Emily." Lorraine led her to the sunroom, where a dusty Bible and unopened mail lay scattered. She poured sweet tea, but neither of them touched it. "I don't know what you've heard," Emily began, "but I think something happened to Rebecca. And I think Pastor Jonathan knows more than he's saying." Lorraine nodded slowly, eyes fixed on a photograph of the church youth group taped to the wall. "She came to me a week before she died, said she was scared. She didn't give details, but she asked me if I knew anything about his time in Texas." Emily's heart skipped. "She was investigating him." "Yes, and she found something. I don't know what, but after that, she stopped coming to the Wednesday women's group." Her smile faded. Her voice trembled when she spoke. Emily reached into her purse and pulled out the photograph from the funeral. "What about this? Did you see the bruises?" Lorraine looked at the image and closed her eyes. "I did, but I wasn't allowed to say anything. Jonathan had full control of the service, and the funeral director, well, he's a deacon." Emily felt her stomach churn. "You think they covered it up?" "I think people see what they want to see, Emily. In this town, Pastor Miles is a shepherd, and sheep don't question the shepherd." Emily left Lorraine's house with a growing sense of purpose. Her sister had tried to uncover the truth. Now it was her turn. At the Willow County Sheriff's Department, Detective Aaron Caldwell was reviewing open files when Emily walked in, clutching a folder. "Detective, I'm Rebecca Miles' sister. I need to talk to someone." Caldwell, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and a sharp tongue, led her into a conference room. "We ruled it an accident, Ms. Langston. The medical examiner confirmed a broken neck from a fall." "I don't believe it was an accident," Emily said. "And I don't think you do either." Caldwell raised an eyebrow. "What makes you say that?" "Because if it were anyone else, not a beloved pastor, you'd have asked more questions. I have a photo of unexplained bruising. I have a witness saying she was afraid. And I know he was hiding something from his past." She slid over the photo, followed by a printed copy of the old article from Texas detailing Jonathan's exit from St. Luke's Church. Caldwell leaned back in her chair, expression unreadable. "You've done your homework. Is that enough to reopen the case?" "Not yet, but it's enough to look deeper." Quietly. Meanwhile, at the church, Jonathan Miles was preparing for his Sunday sermon. He stood alone in his office, staring at the crucifix on the wall. His reflection glared back at him from the window pane. He'd been slipping lately. Sleep was hard to come by. His sermons felt hollow. He reached into the drawer and pulled out the bottle of temazepam. One pill, then another. He swallowed them dry. Detective Caldwell requested the medical examiner's report again, this time combing through the fine details. She noted Rebecca's wrist injuries and also a small contusion on the back of her head. It could have been from the fall, or it could have been something else. She called the funeral director, Anthony Wexler. "Mr. Wexler, I need to ask about the preparation of Rebecca Miles's body. Did you note any injuries beyond the official report?" There was a long pause. "Detective, I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm implying nothing. Just answer the question." Another pause, then, "There were marks. Bruising. I mentioned it to Pastor Miles, and he said she bruised easily, that she had anemia. I made a note of it and left it at that." "Did she have anemia on record?" "Not to my knowledge." Caldwell's jaw clenched. She hung up and called Emily. "I'm not promising anything, but we're taking another look." That Sunday, the church filled to capacity. Rumors had started to spread, hushed whispers about Rebecca's fall not adding up, about a secret from Texas. Jonathan stood at the pulpit, aware of the shifting tone. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Brothers and sisters," he began, "I want to speak today about trials, about what it means to be tested by fire." He spoke of Job, of losing everything and clinging to God. But beneath the surface, his voice trembled. Halfway through the sermon, a woman stood up in the second row. It was Lorraine. "I'm sorry, Pastor," she said loudly, "but I can't stay silent anymore." A gasp swept through the congregation. Jonathan froze. Sister Lorraine, please. Rebecca was scared of you. She came to me because she didn't feel safe. And now she's gone. And we're pretending it was God's will? Number, that's not the truth. She turned and walked out, head high. The church sat in stunned silence. Jonathan's hands gripped the sides of the pulpit. People say things when they're grieving, he said. Let us pray for her. But the murmurs had begun. Back at the sheriff's office, Detective Caldwell received a call from a woman named Vanessa McAllister. I heard you're investigating Pastor Jonathan Miles. I think I can help. Vanessa spoke from Dallas. Her voice cracked with emotion. She told Caldwell everything. The late-night counseling sessions, the blurred boundaries, the threats when she refused to stay silent. They dropped the charges, said I had no proof. But I wasn't lying. And now someone else is dead. Caldwell took notes. Carefully, thoroughly, she had enough. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills of Willow Creek, 2 patrol cars pulled up to the parsonage. Jonathan was sitting in the backyard, Bible on his lap, glass of bourbon beside him. He saw them approach and knew. Detective Caldwell stepped forward. Pastor Jonathan Miles, you are under investigation for the suspicious death of your wife, Rebecca Miles. We're reopening the case. Please come with us. He stood slowly, eyes hollow. You'll never prove it. That's not up to me, Caldwell said. That's up to the truth. The courtroom was silent, unnervingly so. It was early April when the trial of Pastor Jonathan Miles began. National media had latched onto the case. The headlines read like something out of a Southern Gothic novel. Widowed pastor accused of bride's murder. From grace to guilt. The tragedy in Willow Creek. Inside the packed courthouse, the air was thick with tension. Townsfolk filled every bench, faces pale and anxious. Some had grown up under Jonathan's sermons. Others had been baptized by him. Many refused to believe he was capable of killing Rebecca, but others had begun to wonder if the man at the pulpit had only shown them what they wanted to see. Jonathan sat between his 2 attorneys, wearing a charcoal suit and the same silver tie he'd worn at his wedding. His expression was unreadable, calm, composed, too rehearsed. Across the room, Emily Langston sat beside Detective Caldwell and her friend Mia. Her eyes didn't move from Jonathan. She wanted justice, nothing less. The prosecution opened with a methodical blow. Assistant District Attorney Carla Monroe addressed the jury with poise. This is not just a story about a fall, she began. This is a story about deception, control, and a man who wore a mask for years. Pastor Jonathan Miles was not who he appeared to be. Beneath the image of piety was a man consumed by fear. Fear that his wife had uncovered a secret he'd buried for a decade. And when she confronted him, he silenced her. Permanently. The defense, led by veteran attorney Ronald Talbot, countered with confidence. The prosecution's case is built on speculation, hearsay, and emotional conjecture. Rebecca Miles died in a tragic accident. Nothing more. The state wants to vilify a man of faith based on whispers and old stories. But whispers can be loud. The first witnesses were medical experts. The coroner was firm under oath. In your professional opinion, the prosecutor asked, do the injuries sustained by Mrs. Miles align with an accidental fall? The coroner shifted. The neck injury is consistent with a fall, yes. But the bruising on her wrist and upper arms? That suggests force, gripping, possibly restraint. Could those injuries have occurred during the fall? Possible, but unlikely. Next came the toxicology expert. Was there anything found in Mrs. Miles's system? Yes, a low dosage of temazepam, a sedative. Not enough to cause death, but enough to potentially impair balance or cognition. Gasps echoed from the benches. Emily turned to Caldwell. She was drugged. Caldwell nodded. Likely without her knowledge. The next wave of testimony came from those closest to Rebecca. Lorraine Evans sat poised but solemn in her navy dress, wringing her hand slightly. Rebecca came to me a week before her death. She said she'd found something troubling about Jonathan's past. She was afraid. She asked me if I knew anything about St. Luke's Church in Texas. Did you? Only rumors. But I believed her. And what happened after she told you this? She withdrew from church duties. She seemed anxious, lost. And then, she was gone. The defense pressed her. Isn't it true, Ms. Evans, that grief can distort perception? Perhaps Rebecca was emotional, or confused, or simply mistaken? She was clear-headed. She was scared. Then came Vanessa McAllister. From the witness stand, Vanessa described her experience with Jonathan during his tenure in Texas. The courtroom hung on every word. He was my pastor. I was 22. I came to him for guidance after a breakup. He was kind at first, too kind. He started texting at night, inviting me to private counseling. I thought I was imagining it, until the night he kissed me in his office. I pulled away. The next day he said I was confused, that if I told anyone, it would be my word against God's servant. Did you report it? Yes, the church investigated but found no hard proof. They asked him to step down quietly. That was it. The defense objected to relevance. The judge allowed the testimony. Jonathan never looked at Vanessa. Emily herself was called to testify. Her voice cracked only once, describing the photos she took of her sister's bruised wrist. Rebecca never bruised easily, she said. I knew something was wrong. She told the court about her conversations with Lorraine, about the secrecy surrounding the funeral, about how Rebecca had been trying to uncover her husband's past. I believe she found out the truth, and he couldn't risk it coming out. The defense mounted a strong case. They brought character witnesses, parishioners who described Jonathan as a selfless leader. They emphasized the lack of eyewitnesses, the inconclusive physical evidence, the possibility of a sedative being self-administered. Jonathan's attorney made a powerful appeal. There is no video, no confession, no witness to the alleged crime, only shadows and stories. You cannot send a man to prison based on shadows. But the prosecution's rebuttal was sharper. Criminals rarely commit crimes in front of a crowd. What we have is a pattern of abuse, manipulation, and secrecy. A wife who feared her husband, a history of misconduct, a timeline that fits too perfectly, and a body that tells a story Jonathan never expected anyone to read. The courtroom held its breath as Jonathan took the stand in his own defense. His tone was humble, his words practiced. I love Rebecca. She was my world. Her death shattered me. The prosecutor rose. Pastor Miles, did you ever drug your wife? Absolutely not. Did you push her down the stairs? I found her at the bottom. We were arguing that night, but not violently. She said she was leaving. I went to get her suitcase. When I came back, she was gone. And your prior misconduct at St. Luke's? I made mistakes, emotional entanglements. I was lost then, but I found God again. You found God, or you found a new town to forget the old one. The defense objected, sustained, but the damage was done. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Emily barely slept. She sat in her motel room, clutching the locket Rebecca had left behind. She remembered her sister's laughter, her stubbornness, her devotion to truth. No matter the verdict, Emily had done what she came to do, make sure her sister was heard. On the third morning, the jury returned. The four women stood. The judge asked for the verdict. On the charge of second-degree murder, we find the defendant guilty. A sharp gas spread through the room. Jonathan closed his eyes. Emily broke down silently. Mia held her hand. The judge issued the sentence 2 weeks later. 35 years to life. No chance of parole before 30. In the weeks that followed, the town of Willow Creek wrestled with its identity. Grace Fellowship Chapel closed its doors for the first time in 70 years. Some parishioners clung to denial. Others began to reflect. A few, like Lorraine, began organizing support groups for survivors of clergy abuse. Emily started a foundation in Rebecca's name, offering legal support for women facing abuse inside religious institutions. One summer morning, she returned to the chapel alone. The pews were dusty. The cross still hung over the pulpit. She lit a candle. You weren't wrong to ask questions, Rebecca. You weren't wrong to be afraid, and you weren't wrong to fight. She left the church in silence, sunlight pouring through the stained glass window behind her. And for the first time since her sister's death, she felt something close to peace. In the quiet aftermath of justice, the final sermon leaves us with more than just headlines and courtroom drama. It leaves us with a sobering truth. Evil doesn't always come with a warning. Sometimes it wears a kind smile. Sometimes it stands at the pulpit. Rebecca believed in love, in faith, and in redemption. But belief without awareness can be dangerous. This story is a reminder that we must never silence our intuition. When something feels wrong, it probably is. Whether in relationships, religious institutions, or positions of power, trust should never come without accountability. And if you're watching this and you or someone you know is in a relationship where fear has become louder than love, please know this: you are not alone. Speak up. Reach out. Your voice could save a life, even your own. If this story moved you or made you think, don't keep it to yourself. Comment below. What shocked you the most about Jonathan's downfall? Like this video to help more people find this powerful message. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to Twisted Guilts for more haunting, eye-opening true crime stories every week. Until next time, stay aware, stay curious, and stay safe.